let us remember what was good about the last California, the first California. The things that were good about it were unlike its Formula One team, Ferrari's road car department rarely does anything wrong these days. But back in 2009, it created a car called the California, and in my book, it was a bit of a spudder. It was quite clever within the niche, a 2+2 folding hard top, but it wasn't great to drive. It wasn't a real Ferrari. Anyhow, Ferrari's back now with a revised California called the California T, and T stands for turbocharged. This is a very significant car. It's the first series production Ferrari with a turbocharged smaller capacity engine. So let's drop the roof and go for a drive. The concept of a non-driver's Ferrari is slightly confused, and it's probably insulting to the team that develops these cars because it still is, by any normal measure, a real driver's car. But let us remember what was good about the last California, the first California. The things that were good about it were I actually hated it. I thought it was dreadful. I thought the chassis was terrible. I thought the engine was a bit gutless low down. The gearbox wasn't bad. The gearbox wasn't bad. But it looked like someone had taken a TVR Tamora and somehow deliberately tried to make it look a bit uglier. I just couldn't believe it had a Ferrari badge on it. I thought it was an utter steaming pile of doggy doo-doo. So, I hope I've left you with no doubt as to what I thought about the last California. But this car, from the moment you approach it, first of all, looks miles better. Little things like 1.5 centimetres off the rear boot line. It doesn't have that really high look. They've pulled the rear headlights apart, they've put a diffuser on it, they've got rid of those ridiculous fake stacked tailpipes that looked absolutely preposterous. The thing now looks like a Ferrari. It's more dignified at the front. They've basically copied a bit of the F-Type at the front. Is that litigious? Am I going to get sued for that, Neil? Probably am. The whole thing just looks better. I'm not a huge aesthete, but I have to say that if I'm going to buy a Ferrari, I want it to look like a Ferrari. The California T looks like a Ferrari. But the reason we're here is to try this new engine. This turbocharged under 4 litre V8 it's the future for Ferrari and for the rest of us. And we have to get used to it. So what Ferrari's done to make this car behave like a normally aspirated engine, and that's what all the engineering's about. They've tried to take a turbocharged motor and make it behave and feel and respond and sound like a turbocharged engine.
Turbocharging the California was an obvious decision on both efficiency and drivability grounds. The new engine is fiendishly complex. There's a separate technical video describing it if you want it, and produces some big numbers, 560 horsepower and 557 foot-pounds. The 3.9 litre twin-turbo V8 was actually producing bigger numbers during development, but where do you plonk the sportier 458 replacement if the old man's Cabrio is punting 600 horsepower? Quite. This car is still miles faster than its predecessor. The body revisions are clever too. A lower boot and general restyle turn it from something a bit gopping into a looker, a reverse Leslie Ash if you will. The cabin isn't too different and still has the slightly shonky Fiat double-din sat-nav. The folding hardtop roof is completely unchanged. Of course, the California T doesn't square with many people's idea of what a Ferrari should be. It's an open-top GT without all the sexiness. But this is a vast improvement on the old car. It's now properly fast. It has a great road chassis and looks like a Ferrari GT should, to my eyes. Yep, the Mercedes SL's life just became even harder.
Does this engine feel turbocharged? That's the key question. We've got so many brands trying to do this now. BMW have been, until now for me, the best at it. particularly with the V8 cars, putting the turbochargers within the V and getting that very fast response. This is a step forward again. This does not feel turbocharged. The torque mapping is so clever. Yes, they're artificially limiting torque to give you the sensation that you get more the more you ask of the throttle pedal, the more you ask of the engine, but I have no problem with that at all, because the sensation is of a car that's got very linear performance. Sometimes you miss leaving it in a higher gear and just absolutely letting the torque surge you forwards, but still, fourth gear, fifth gear, put your foot down, you still get that sensation of being lunged forwards. So, on large throttle openings in very high gears, it feels turbocharged because the response and the volume of performance is unnatural, but using full throttle in the lower gears for high RPM, it doesn't feel turbocharged because it's very responsive. What about the noise? This is the best engine on the planet to turbocharge, because for me the flat plane crank V8 from Ferrari is not a great sounding engine. They create lots of volume and bah 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 noises by playing around with the exhaust, but it's not musical like an AMG V8 for me. It never has been. So what we've got here, because we've got these equal length exhausts, means it doesn't sound great, but it sounds like the California did. It's lost some of that kind of ripping, blaring noise at the top end, but it's still exciting. People that buy this car are not going to be unhappy with it. And most importantly, for the future of Ferrari Berlinettas, let's say the next 458, if it's going to have a development of this engine in it, I think it could be sensational. Power output, well, rumour is that these cars, this California T, in test spec was running over 600 horsepower for development, and they've had to wind it back because they need to leave some space for the next 458. There's a rumour but it can handle 750 horsepower. Imagine that. No, there's some very, very clever work going on here. Let's talk about the California T chassis though. The last car, the first one, I haven't driven one since the first California, and it was horrible. It had no spring rate, it had the wrong damping, it was just wrong. It would hit the ground, it felt no composure, it was wrong. This car is a different machine altogether. With the bumpy road button on, the soft dampers on these roads, it's got lovely composure, the ride's good. It's got this faster steering rack, which I was worried about, but I don't feel it's too quick. It's probably got the nicest steering speed of any Ferrari. You can place it accurately, it's comfortable. This car is everything you need a car in this marketplace to be. You know, Mercedes-Benz have just got it so wrong with the current SL in terms of its looks, that it's allowed people to go and look elsewhere. The structure of this car is not as stiff as the SL. It doesn't have that incredible rigidity, even though it's aluminium. So it does shake a little bit around the scuttle, but the buffeting's good. The cabin is great. It's got two little seats behind me. Okay, it's not a car I would crave to own, but if you're in this marketplace, you'd have to say it's probably the best thing out there.